senior officials. Meanwhile, the UAE's Ministry of Human Resources and Emiratization announced that over 80,000 Emiratis are now employed in the country's private sector, which is a significant increase compared to previous year. In 2018, there were only 27,055 Emiratis working in the private companies, but this number almost doubled to over 50,000 by the end of 2022. The growth was contributed to government's resolution, policies and programs that aim to evolve the UAE labor market, with the NAFI's federal government initiative playing a key role in increasing the competitiveness of Emiratis in the private sector. The United States economy has experienced a notable acceleration, surpassing expectations and displaying promising signs of resilience. The gross domestic product GDP grew at a yearly rate of 2.4%, surpassing the 2.0% growth rate observed in the previous quarter, better than what economists polled by Reuters had projected, a 1.8% growth. Additionally, businesses showed increased confidence by investing more in equipment, contributing to the positive economic outlook. The weekly jobless claims fell, with initial claims for state unemployment benefits declining by 7,000 to a seasonally adjusted 221,000 for the week ending July 2022. This decrease suggests that companies are retaining their workers even after the challenges they face in finding labor during the COVID-19 pandemic. Following this development, the Federal Reserve has raised the policy rate by 25 basis points, indicating confidence in the economy's performance and prospects. The United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres has passionately urged for urgent and radical action on climate change during a speech in New York yesterday. He expressed deep concern over the record-breaking July temperatures, declaring that the Earth has transitioned from a warming phase to an alarming era of global boiling, and that climate change is no longer a distant threat, but a terrifying reality that requires immediate action. Describing the intense heat as a cruel summer and a disaster for the entire planet, Guterres emphasized that July 2023 is on track to break numerous records. Ahead of the Climate Ambition Summit in September, Guterres demanded that world leaders take the lead and stop making excuses for inaction and commit to achieving carbon neutrality as close to 2040 as possible, while emerging economies should aim for the same goal as close as 2050. And that's how we end today's morning news update. Check out our social media handles on the scroll bar and follow us for another kind of good experience. I am Ola Oluwabe. Back to the Early Exchange studio.
Thanks a lot for the news. Now let's have analysis of major news items. Now we'll begin this morning with the Corporate Affairs Commission (CAC) saying they plan to delist 100,000 companies from their register for failure to file annual return higher. Now, when a company registers with the CAC, it is expected that yearly they will file in their annual return. So these companies, 100,000 of them, for 10 years have failed to do so, and the CAC says they will delist them from their register, but they can get back on when they pay outstanding debts and have a court order as provided by law.
Essentially, there are two categories of companies that fail to, file their annual tax returns. In the first category are those who, for one reason or the other, just don't want to go and do the normal thing. They are making money, they are earning income, but they are trying to evade tax payments. That is talking from what I know. In another category, you find people that just registered their company and the companies are not functional.
True.
Online, it is called poaching or cyber squatting. You just grab a particular name and you register it. That name becomes unavailable to others who might want to register it. And the law mandates you to do this on an annual basis. I need to to file your tax returns, because you are meant to be a revenue source to the economy of Nigeria. So if your company exists on the portal of CAC and you're not filing any returns, it means you are not really meant to have that company, because why populate the space when you're not going to activate anything over there? And so these and many more are some of the issues surrounding that. And it's a good thing that we have the CAC saying it wants to delist companies. Okay, we're not alone on the show today. We have with us, as always, Idahosa Osamanze, who is the Director, Policy and Research, Africa Development Studies Center. Good morning, Idahosa.
Yeah, good morning, Blessing. Good morning, our esteemed viewers. Good morning.
Okay, CAC wants to delist 10,000 companies that have failed to file any tax return in the last 10 years.
Well, somehow a lot of things worry me. And I think these are not things that should actually make the news.
Why shouldn't they?
You see, because there are rules that governs the registration of companies. When people fail to meet the rule, the system shut them out automatically. You see, because sometimes we just give room for people to begin to speculate about a lot of issues. Like Ayo said, a lot of companies are out there that are registered for some reasons, because we've been immersed in a whole lot of corruptions. Some people who want to bid for public office, they can register 3 companies and submit this 3 names on a single bid. Companies which, of course, they don't have any right, any intention to run. So for me, like it's done everywhere, if we are all on the database of CAC, and then you have to really be confirmed. This is what is very important that we are not doing. People just go to CAC and register companies. Nobody do due diligence to even know whether this company really exists and where there are actual locations. So companies are registered in people's house, in residence. But who is going to confirm whether those companies are actually there? So I think there's a whole lot that CAC need to do and put the system in place as it is in other places. If you do not submit your annual return, and after the grace period, the system shuts you out. And after a certain period of time, of course, your name comes back into the database. Anybody can search it and take it.
Which is what happens with websites. If you have a domain name now that you have registered, okay, and you refuse to renew your domain name when the time is due, you'll be served warnings.
Yes.
After like 60 days, they will take you out. Then they will tell you after a while your database is deleted. I mean your files completely deleted, and your name becomes available for the next person to register.
Yes, I think it's good, because some persons register businesses they are not yet ready for. They just want to secure the name or have the right to show that, oh, I have a business, in case they want to use the business, they need to seek for loans and some other things elsewhere to get some benefits, but they have no intention of starting in the immediate. So I even think the 10-year grace period is quite gracious. It's really, really gracious. And it's coming in the news, makes people know who have just felt that, oh, once I register it, it's registered there. At whatever time I'm ready to have it operational, I will still have my business corporation registered. They now know that you can't just do that. So I think it will make a lot of them who are still serious or who still have the mind to pursue business along with the name businesses they registered will now do the needful. So it brings sanity, and it clears the space for those who want to actually do business.
So away from that, we have yet another story that made the papers today. World Bank is telling Nigerian government to reduce borrowing from CBN if we want to sustain the recent action of fighting inflation. We are on a different level of fiscal policy in our country, both fiscal and monetary policy. And of course, we know that, yes, we have inflation in double digits. It's been around for a while now. Now, part of what drives that inflation, according to this particular release, is government borrowing from CBN. So the CBN lead economist is saying here that if we want to really tackle the problem of inflation and make any gain from our recent or our rejigged fiscal and monetary policies, we should, as a matter of necessity, avoid or reduce government borrowing from CBN. That's from the lead economist for World Bank.
You know, some years back, the governor of Edo State actually raised this alarm that CBN was printing money for government to borrow. And we have seen that that's almost true, because what has happened over time is that you're trying to reduce inflation, but you're pumping so much money into the economy through borrowing. And then that increases the debt profile, especially the domestic debt profile of... now, again, if you do that, even the CBN is supposed to be bankers, so
Yes.
it's supposed to be taking, of course, going to CBN to get money for people who want to do business, so they can even access those funds, because federal government has connived it into social program that really would not bring about development. And I think it's a good advice, and any sensible person should understand that excess of borrowing makes you a slave. So if we have to really deal with inflation, I think government, rather than projecting the image that it does not have, as to say we have money. Because every time you go out there, people talk about Nigeria, we're having money, we are here producing nation. But they don't look at the quantum of oil vis-a-vis our population size. You compare us with Qatar, for example. They are producing 2 million barrels per day to a population that is not up to Lagos population.
And we are producing even less than 2
Oh
million
yeah,
barrels
UAE with 3.1 million barrels per day to a population of less than 10 million people. And we are doing less than 2 million to a population of 200 million people. So people just naturally feel that there's so much money in Nigeria, so there's so much pressure on government. But I think the real problem here is the fact that governments in Nigeria over the years have been too secretive about their operations. They should be able to put the cards on the table to engage with stakeholders so that people will stop making unreasonable demands on government, to know that there are limits to what government can carry and what government can do. And I think this frank conversation is what will help this advice to work, of borrowing less, so that we can begin to focus energy on productive ventures, and people see how they can also help themselves and don't make government, in quotes, to be their God.
Yes, because people have a thwarted perspective of what creating money is about. There are two ways, essentially, by which money is created. One way is to print it, talking about currency now, which we are saying will not work. When we were much younger, we always thought, okay, why can't the bank just print? At some point, your money becomes worthless because more money will be chasing fewer goods. Then one other way is for you to adopt the wealth creation mechanism, like we spoke here some days ago, where you have to exchange value for this money to be created. Money essentially is meant to be a transfer of value to you. You give me something of value, service or product, then I pay you back in return. So we shouldn't be looking at printing paper money, which drives inflation up. We should be talking about wealth creation, increasing our dragnet of income, either through local production or increasing our service offerings to the world at large. When we do this, that is what economics teaches us, at least at the basic level. That if you dial up your value offering to the world, then definitely wealth becomes created and you will not have to print more money like we're doing now. So it's a very good one. We shouldn't be borrowing. When you go out borrowing, you become enslaved because there is no free lunch, even in Freetown.
All right, let's come to sports as the Super Falcons of Nigeria thrashed Australia 3-2 yesterday. So with the win, the Super Falcons have a chance of reaching the round 16 of the World Women's Cup this year. And this is the first win for Nigeria in the competition, and the 5th win actually in the history of the Women's World Cup. So I am particularly happy for the Super Falcons, and I'm cheering them on to victory. And I think I should expect that Ayo and Idahosa also cheer all cheer the Falcons on to victory.
At the end of the day, whether man or woman, I don't want us to. We're still Nigerians, and I don't, let us not go into gender shaming. Because it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. I celebrate them. Of course, when we opened, I did that. Well, you mentioned something before we went on air that when you watch our women play, you don't have heart attack.
Yes.
Well, in recent times, yeah, that's true. But we've also given you reasons to cheer in the past as well. But all the same, we must give it to the women for doing us proud. Okay, they did it well, and we once again, Nigeria is on the global platform for something good. We are a people of quality, and we are showing that. Our women are showing that now. We're just with them. It was
thank to our women for that honor brought to us as a people, especially in a time like this when, of course, you see anger everywhere. At least there's something to smile and giving us some respite to see that at least good things are happening around us. It's always not always bad news. We say congratulations to our women. More wins.
The road is still far. The road is still, I mean,
yes,
it's just, they are still in the round of 16.
It's so far.
It's so far.
Round of 8 and
yes, and so,
forward.
Maybe on a lighter note, when Asisa Toshola scored that goal and she pulled off her jersey and, she celebrated. Well, that kind of wild jubilation is not uncommon on the pitch of football. And people are, of course, it fetched her and some of her teammates, yellow cards, which some people said were just unnecessary. But then, when you are happy, you are happy. It's not easy to. We know what it is like. This is World Cup we're talking about.
And considering it's the first win for the competition, it was their first win, so they just couldn't contain the excitement.
The excitement, okay. All right, then to one other items in the news today, we're talking about the travel cost. Of course, since we deregulated the forex market in Nigeria here, airfare has actually gone up, and people are looking at holiday period, summer period in some parts of the world, in the West, where most Nigerians abroad want to come back home and see their families and enjoy with them. And now to travel from Nigeria to London or vice versa, you spend upward of 1 million naira and so on and so forth. The people are saying this has maybe a negative effect on travel during this holiday. It means we talk about rest. Was it yesterday now? So if you are planning to come over to Nigeria and rest, then maybe you have to think twice now. Probably stay where you are. That's what we're saying.
It's not just even coming to Nigeria, because this is the summertime where a lot of Nigerians want to make holidays trip abroad. But because of the cost of airfares, some are having to resort to booking their tickets from neighboring countries or from overseas, which is a loss to the local travel agencies in Nigeria and also a loss to the Nigerian economy. So that's one issue that has to be looked into. The aviation sector, we know that they attribute the rise in the cost of airfares to the exchange rate. But I think that the disparity, there's still some level of disparity between the cost of booking airfares from Nigeria and booking from neighboring countries. That also has to be looked into, because if they're resorting to booking airfares from neighboring countries, then of course it is also possible that the fares can maybe a bit slightly reduced. Then I think that Nigeria we need to work on developing our tourist site, because we need to cash in on this. If we're traveling, making trips overseas for holidays, then we also should be attracting lots of tourists come into the country for holidays, for rest. Even Nigerians, if the cost of airfares for you to go to maybe a country like Dubai for just holiday, it is cheaper for you to just have that enjoyment, that rest in a serene, well-arranged environment in Nigeria. You may want to consider that. So we should be developing tourism in Nigeria as well.
Well, I think speaking to this issue about airfare in Nigeria, it's just that we live in an environment where people are just absolutely very greedy. It's not just about the airfares. Now, if you actually do the comparison in dollars, from Benin Republic to London is less than $500. From Nigeria to London is over $1,000. So it's not even an exchange rate issue. It's a value issue that we deliberately have to put cost high and to make life very difficult for ourselves. Is the real issue here. And that's why people say the cost of constructing 1 kilometer road in Nigeria is enough to do 10, 20 kilometer road in Benin Republic. It's not because of the terrain. It's just the greedy nature of some people who don't see why we should make other people happy. You would know that you live in Lagos. If you just come to a bus stop and all of a sudden you saw that there are a lot of people waiting, the price hike.
Essentially.
Nothing has changed. There's no increase in petrol price because you just saw people. You take advantage or due advantage of them. And I think that as Nigerians, we need a whole lot of value to begin to put human face on our business practice. That's the only way we can enjoy shared prosperity. We cannot always be taking advantage of the system, taking advantage of the people, and exploiting people to the detriment of the entire economic growth.
Okay, we're always quick to point fingers at leadership. I keep saying it that followership is as much a problem as leadership is in Nigeria here. Looking at what you just cited as an example, would you say leaders are the ones who ask bus drivers, commercial bus drivers to, hike the price? No, nobody. Tinubu will not come and tell you, okay, because it's Friday, people are traveling out of the city of Lagos to increase the fare price. Nobody will do that. It's about perception. It's about the humanity in your mind. Yeah. If you have it in you, you have it in you. And like you said, we should stop exploiting one another just for short-term gain.
Yeah, look at the local airline industry also.
Yes.
It travels from here to Abuja, which is just 1 hour or less, 55 minutes. Some airline charges 50,000, 60,000. Some are charging 160,000 on economic seat.
And they use the same kind of fuel.
The same fuel. The same route. So pricing really has a mechanism.
I think
this is just the real issue. So somehow we are just the enemy of ourselves. Really not the government. Although, like they say, leaders are taken from the midst of their people. What that suggests to me is that probably all of us, that's who we are. Maybe when we are in that same position, we are likely to act same way. In UK, when it is Christmas season, fares are dropped.
Oh, intentionally.
So
intentionally. As their own offering to celebrate Jesus. In this part of the world, prices will soar. So these are the irony around our environment.
Maybe our own prices have been faithful to the law of demand and supply, because when demand rises, price must go up.
But when you make the price so high, you also reduce demand over a long period of time.
Oh well, you're right.
You see, what you fail to realize is that it's price, demand, and supply. If the price is overboard, where of course the purchasing power of the individual cannot, what do? People don't do. They don't patronize. And that's why the industry is sick. The industry is sick. There's a lot of people who would have loved to fly to Abuja. But when they consider the cost of going and coming, they cannot afford it.
They can't.
So value is actually in volume in some cases. But we want to always get the big chunk at once and then loses out in the longer run.
Well, a smart business person will consider the long-term effect of whatever decision that they make. And I think also that the FCCPC can also come in at this time. Some time ago, we talked about the FCCPC trying to look at the hike of food items. It should also look at other sectors, not just food items, the aviation sector, other sector where services or goods are overpriced. Then it is the time for the FCCPC to come to the protection of the consumer.
We owe them,
charges.
we owe the public that particular mandate to keep talking about it until those who are meant to hear it and do something about it do so. Okay, let's hang it there for now on the review of major items in the papers today, because we'll go on a short break now. When we return, we'll look at the ministerial nominees, the first 28 of them in details. When they say, show me your friends and I'll tell you whom you are, we say it is outdated. It is show me your friends, show me your people, and I'll tell you where your country is going. We'll look at where we are going by the virtue of the list that's been released. So, short break now, and we're still here. Don't go anywhere.
So finally, the ministerial list, long-awaited ministerial list, has been released by President Bola Tinubu and sent to the National Assembly for screening. Now, Nigerians have been waiting for this list because the president at inauguration actually said that he will hit the ground running, and so people have been waiting. Who are those you're going to hit the ground with? So the first 28 has been released. Now, 11 states of the Federation will have to wait for representation because when we talked about the appointment of ministers, we did tell you that according to the Nigerian Constitution, each state of the country is supposed to have a representation, including the Federal Capital Territory. But so far, from the 28 list released, 11 states will have to wait. And these states include Adamawa, Bayelsa, Gombe, Kano, Kebbi, Kogi, Plateau, Lagos, Osun, Yobe, and Zamfara. So looking deeper into the 28th list, we'll call out the names of the nominees and give you a bit of history about their antecedents, and let's look at them holistically. So some former governors actually made the list, and that's one part that people are looking at. Oh, really? So it's like, let's bring in some technocrats into this issue. Let's into governance. Let's bring some persons. But I know you have something that you want to talk about before we get into the personalities that actually made the list.
Okay, we waited for so long. Of course, we didn't wait longer than the law provided for. We're meant to have the list not longer than 60 days after inauguration, and at least the president was able to do that. They say a general is as good as the soldiers that he has around him. Even though we can't conclude because we don't have the full squad yet, we still have some more names to go. But we have 28 of them. So we'll start with that in Dahosa. Was it worth the wait, going by what we have now?
Well, except you have not been in the tough before, you will not understand why there's a need for this wait. You see, we're in a democracy, and especially the one that is described as majoritarian ethic. In other words, you can only win election when you have majority on your side. And so, the need to balance politics and governance is what's critical. And that's why we are still waiting for some to come. Because while you are thinking of delivering on governance, you also must be thinking of how you are going to sustain your party and hold them together so that you can have the atmosphere that will guarantee the success you actually desire. So you see, the president had to be very careful to ensure that this balance is sustained, especially in a nation that has been polarized and by different indices, whether it's religion, ethnicity, political affiliation, and the rest of it. So the need to do this balance is what has kept this list for this long. I said to people, on the day Tinubu was on the Eagles Square trying to contest for the primary of this election, he had an idea of who can become ministers in his cabinet across. But you see, it's not something that had to be done unilaterally. But you have to carry along all stakeholders. And some of them are also of equal weight. Yes, you may say the buck stop on the president's table. The truth of the matter is that it's actually not on the president's table, because there are a lot of things the president cannot do alone.
Presidency is not a one-man business, blessing.
At all.
They
at
say
all.
it is not.
At all. So let's look at some of the governors that actually made the list. We have David Umahi, who is the current senator representing Ebonyi South Senatorial District, and he was two-term governor of Ebonyi State from 2015 to 2023, and as deputy governor from 2011 to 2015. Before I get into it, I think let's take them one after the other. Having former governors now as ministerial nominees, what's your take on that?
We may not be able to look at them one by one,
yes.
but we can actually group them together. You see, one of the things that stand out in this list is the fact that a lot of people had thought that the president will be looking at people who will be just yes men to him. But looking at this list, and especially those that were picked, who were former governor, David Umahi is an excellent performer. You can give that to him. If you go to Ebonyi, you see what he has done in infrastructure. The revolution in agriculture is massive. In short, that actually endeared him to the president, the former president, Muhammadu Buhari, because of performance. So he's a strong personality. He's not a yes person. El-Rufai, in short, people even advised the president to run away from El-Rufai because it's like a snake. He can bite anybody. Now, for the president to include El-Rufai in that list shows to you that he's not just looking for yes people, he's looking for people who can contribute idea. Don't also forget the trajectory of the performance of Governor El-Rufai, whether as FCT minister or as the governor of Kaduna State himself. Yes, people talk about the crisis in Kaduna State, but nobody had taken a look at the infrastructural revolution that has happened in Kaduna State.
Under
El-Rufai, creating a brand new city with basic infrastructure laid out, the first in Nigeria. Moving the revenue of Kaduna from where it was to almost competing with Lagos as we speak. These are phenomenal achievements. So we give it to El-Rufai, and it's a strong voice. Now, people also look at Nyesom Wike, that this one that PDP could not contain. How will this man wrap his hand around this man? But again, here is leadership. That the president is not actually looking for people who will say yes to him. He's actually looking for men and women who will actually contribute their experience, their sagacity politically to make Nigeria work. That's what I see in the list.
I think I want to stand by you on that. I mean, if you look at that composition, he is not looking essentially for those who will say yes to him on all fronts. As a matter of fact, you will be fair to say he put together a list of contrarians, those who can stand up to him and say, Mr. President, even though I am your minister, I don't agree with you on this. Would you have been surprised if Wike was missing on the list? We know that he was the arrowhead of the G5, the governors who stood against, quote unquote, their party and said, no, we should drop party affiliation aside when we're making the choice of the presidency at the time. Now, would you be surprised if Wike was missing?
I would not be surprised. Because in the school of leadership, there are 3 C's that make a very fundamental leader. You have 1, character. You have 1, compassion. And you have 1, consistency. And I think these 3 core attributes find expression in the president. When you talk about consistency, somebody who tells you this is what I want to do, and he goes ahead and do it. The president has had word with these people, even including Wike. And you can remember during the campaign, Wike keeps saying that they will support that person who will have the interest of Rivers State in his heart and will not deceive them. Now, we knew where that person was, given how Wike voted in the presidential election. So the president had given him his word. And what we see play out is a man who stands by what he has said, and this is consistency. You remember during the town hall meeting in Kaduna, the president called El-Rufai out in the public, and I said, I know that you say you want to go and complete your PhD. You don't need the certificate to work. Let's fix Nigeria together. Yes. You are not going anywhere. And the president said, tell me today that you are going to stay with us. Even when El-Rufai was trying to say, well, I don't think, say, you must give me your word, otherwise we won't finish this talk today. And this is what we are seeing. Because right from day one, the president is looking out for people who has enough clout to actually manage the very terrible civil service that we have, so that we can whip them in line with the vision of the administration.
Talking about clout, popular economist Olawale Edun, former deputy governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, also made the list. I know that at this time it's just nomination. They're going to be screened by the Senate, but portfolios have not been assigned to them. What is the expectation from these persons? What would you expect that the National Assembly should be looking at, and in the consideration of assignment of portfolios, given the caliber of persons that made the list?
Well, it's very clear. Wale Edun is very cerebral. Very, very. And everybody knows that. Right as Commissioner of Finance in Lagos State, and his days, and staying with the president up to this moment, shows to you who that man is. In short, he's one of the really strong and solid pillar behind Mr. President. And you see, he was one of the first to be named as a special advisor on monetary policies, because his views are quite clear and they are known. And one thing that you cannot also take away from Wale Edun is loyalty, integrity, honesty at its best.
There is this talk of the list should be a fair blend of technocrats and core politicians, okay? And when you look at the 4 past governors that made the list, you will be tempted to think, oh, they are just core politicians. But people fail to realize that they are technocrats in the contest. Yes. David Umahi is a civil engineer. Badaru Muhammad is an accountant. Of course, El-Rufai is an architect, while Wike is a lawyer. What is now the line between being a technocrat and being a politician at this point in time? Is it what you have done in the past or what you are seen doing at the moment?
Well, I think the blend is there, because a lot of them have become real politicians for a very long time. Look at somebody like Wike, has actually not practiced law, so to speak, in such a way that you would have called him as expert in law. Since 1998, Wike has been out there, from being the local government chairman, becoming a minister, becoming a governor. So he has been in the political turf. But I think what has happened is to see that there are a lot of technocrats who themselves are transformed into politicians over time. When El-Rufai was coming, during the Obasanjo era, he came in as a technocrat to actually sanitize Abuja, because the master plan at that time has been bastardized. And that was what led to his foray into the public space You remember his book, The Accidental Civil Servant.
Public servants. Yeah.
So public servant. So it was not. It was a technocrat all along. But we're also seeing young men, young mind, who have been there in the academy. Look at, for example, Joseph Usef from Benue State, who has been in the academies all his life since he left school, called professional. At the time, he became a superb chairman in Benue State, thinking education. So you have core people who have been there. Okotete from Delta State. So it's a blend. A lot of people who know politics and people who also know the economy and social environment. Look at, for example, Pate from Borno State, and you see he's also one man who had made distinction in the field of primary health practice globally with a long CV, not just as politician, but even also as expert. So we see that blend in the team. A lot of them are politically savvy and also technically savvy, so to speak.
In line with fixing round pegs in round holes, now they are going for screening. What portfolio would you think will befit each person? Let's begin with the 4 governors now, former 4 governors that have made the list, and some of the personalities that have made the list. What kind of portfolios do you think they would function best in?
Well, I think what should be expected here is only one office, really, that will require a professional to man it. And that is the office of the Attorney General Minister for Justice. Because the Attorney General must appear before the court and, of course, before the Supreme Court. And so you can't do that without being a lawyer. Every other ministry really do not require a professional. Because what is required is somebody who has been able to demonstrate leadership in the past. People who can take very difficult decision and follow through with it. And we have seen them in this list. So when you look at the governor who has overseen different ministries in his own state, at least he will have a perspective on all these areas. So leadership is about the ability to manage humans, because he's not the expert who's going to have his hand on the works. It's actually to be able to identify who can do what, and against all odds will be able to project the best to drive the policies of government and have a comprehensive understanding of where the regime is going and what policy to drive along that line.
Okay, let's look at the gender distribution of the roles now. I mean, for the 28 of them, except my calculation is wrong, we have 4 women out of the 20. That's about 25%. I may be wrong on that.
Not 4.
Okay, I mean, the one I see here. So
there are about 6 women.
6. Okay, which still takes us to about 26, 27%, and we're talking about 35% affirmative action here. Should this be an indication of where to still look, even as the other names are meant to be released later?
Well, I think this is quite outstanding for Mr. President, a list of 28, and we're having about 6 women making that list. We should, first of all, say kudos to him, because this is quite inclusive. And this is based on his promise that he was going to really get women to be involved in this whole area. But you see, we only look at just portfolio that are 36. Others are coming. We don't know the number of women that will be in there. So he can get up to 35%. But if he eventually will not get to 35%, having this number of women in this cabinet, a lot of them very vibrant and young, also show that the president respects gender. The only thing that we have not seen here is the constituent has not been represented really in the list is those fiscally challenged.
Yes.
Yeah, and we're also expecting that the president will also include one from that constituent to say that we inclusive in terms of bringing people on board. One thing that also is standing out on this list is that we're also having 2 nominees from Cross River and Katsina State, which is also unusual.
So how does that speak to
yes, of course.
representation of all the states?
Yeah, how it's going to meet up the constitutional requirement. But according to the Chief of Staff, Bajabi Amila, in presenting the letter to the Senate, he has said that the president is trying to tinker with the structure of the ministries. There are new ministries that are likely to emerge. Okay. Probably after the tinkering, the necessary balance will be achieved.
Okay, so much on the ministerial list, and we are waiting for the other list, other names to be released, even as we await confirmation by Senate on Monday. And they have said that they will suspend everything they are doing. They were meant to go on break yesterday, so we learned, but now they will even suspend going on break and focus on the national agenda, national assignment for this period, so that we can have our nominees screened and probably confirmed, or maybe told to take a back seat and try some other time.
Okay, I think that seeing the names already gives Nigeria a sigh of relief and confidence to know that, okay, I think we're on the right track. It's like you having a football match and then you find a list of players. You say, okay, we have this person here, we have this person here. I think it's going to be a good play at the end of the day. And that's how we wrap up the discussion on the segment. We're going to break and then we'll go back to discuss something else. It's the LA Exchange on Sook News. Stay tuned.
Thank you for staying tuned to Early Exchange on Sook News. Over now to a matter of environmental concern. We call it e-waste. Now, when you mention e-waste, most people might not have an idea of what it is. Don't get it wrong. When we say electronic waste, which is the meaning of the E part of it, it doesn't mean electronic in the context of digits, ones and zeros. We're talking about physical materials. Your used computers, your fairly used electronics that are brought to Nigeria, which some people say we have been treated as a dumping ground of all these items from the Western world. So much that we have a whole market carved out for it called the computer village, where you go and you get your second-hand materials. Fine. Maybe there is no harm in, getting electronics that have been used from some other part of the world on the basis of the economic implication, because the cost of getting new ones might be a bit astronomical for some people, depending on how much you earn. But then, at the end of the day, how do you dispose these materials once they have outlived their useful lifespan? And that's where the problem is. In Nigeria here, it is still crude. We still burn e-waste, and that increases our exposure to radiations that we're not even meant to get close to in the first place. So today we're looking at e-waste and the challenges. But before we bring in our guest who will be joining us via Zoom, let me ask, Blessing, how bad is this situation in Nigeria?
I would call it a menace in the sense that we barely even discard e-waste in Nigeria. It's like the e-waste from other countries are shipped down and they become very, very useful items in Nigeria. You mentioned that we have the computer village. Yes, we also have other areas where you can get fairly used they're e-waste from other countries, but they come fairly used items in Nigeria. And I don't even think we see them as waste, because even when they stop functioning as an item, the parts from this item could be a phone, it could be a computer, it could be any electronic device such as a television, are then used to fix other ones. So really, we do not even have them as e-waste. It is hard for you to even see people burning used electronic items, because they are then, the components are then used to constitute other ones or to fix other ones. And it's really bad. They do not only just constitute environmental pollution, but they also make the environment look untidy. They also make the environment look untidy when you go to areas, markets where these items are traded on. But let's watch a report on that, and then we'll begin to talk with our guest who will be joining us via Zoom.
Nigeria is grappling with a ticking time bomb as electronic waste or e-waste continues to mount across the nation. Processing over 500,000 tons of discarded electronics annually, the environmental and financial risks are reaching critical levels. According to experts, electronic waste, otherwise known as e-waste, are discarded electrical appliances such as computers, office electronic equipment, entertainment device electronics, televisions, phones, and so on. It also includes used electronics, which are destined for reuse, resale, salvage, recycling, or disposal. As technology advances rapidly, so does the e-waste problem. Hazardous components from old computers and electronic equipment create massive scrap heaps of e-waste nationwide, particularly affecting developing nations where affordable electronics offer a lifeline for those in poverty. The sheer scale of the issue is staggering. Up to 90% of the world's e-waste, valued at nearly $19 billion, is illegally traded or dumped every year, according to the United Nations Environment Programme. Nigeria faces the daunting task of handling over 1.1 million tons of e-waste yearly, both locally and from international sources. This influx includes a mind-boggling 500,000 containers of e-waste imported monthly. Indeed, e-waste generation in Nigeria has reached an alarming state and has continued to rise. Findings have shown that Nigeria generated 461.3 kilotons in 2019 to rank the highest in West Africa and second after Egypt on the continent. The 461.3 kilotons amounts to 64.2 billion naira. It was gathered that in Nigeria, the largest form of e-waste, which is a computer and its accessories, constitutes about 60%, while mobile devices follow with a 25%. Others like photocopiers and other office equipment account for the remaining 15%. Improper disposal poses a double threat, polluting the environment and endangering public health. Toxic chemicals from discarded electronics seep into the soil and water, presenting a significant danger to communities. As part of moves to sanitize the environment, the Nigerian Communications Commission (NCC) had earlier disclosed plans to commence activities that will result in the formulation of regulations on e-waste in Nigeria. NCC noted that the global concern for the regulation of e-waste is two-pronged, which includes the acute awareness of the hazardous properties and the potential risks to human health, as well as their capacity to degrade the environment, and secondly is the business case and vast potential for wealth creation in recycling e-waste into more benign and productive uses. International Telecommunications Union, ITU, noted that the specific e-waste legislation on the management of it is still lacking in most African countries. According to it, few countries have legislation published in Africa. These include Egypt, Ghana, Madagascar, Nigeria, Rwanda, South Africa, Cameroon, and Côte d'Ivoire. However, it said enforcing the legislation is very challenging. The Federal Ministry of Environment and National Environmental Standards and Regulation Enforcement Agency, NESREA, in collaboration with some e-waste recyclers, recycled some 300 tons of e-waste in Lagos in May 2023. Efforts to control e-waste have faced challenges, but the urgency to act is undeniable. Nigeria must find innovative solutions to manage e-waste sustainably, both for environmental protection and to prevent financial losses. With the clock ticking, addressing the e-waste crisis is not just an environmental responsibility, it is an imperative financial and health imperative for Nigeria's future. Seun Ajayi, Sook News.
Thank you, Sharon Ajayi, for that report. So looking further into the menace, like I described it as, that e-waste contributes in Nigeria. So, Ayer, the reason we've embraced e-waste, why?
We never embraced e-waste in the first place. We embraced electronics. But they become waste at some point because every gadget has its own lifespan. No matter how good your television set is, it will get spoiled one day. No matter how strong your computer set is, it will get spoiled one day. So at some points, everything that is good about it will become wasted once it stops functioning. Now, most of these items are not recyclable. You can't recycle them and they are not biodegradable. They can be broken down into harmless components by the natural ecosystem. So that comes with a particular responsibility of thinking. When you are manufacturing it, how do you think of how it ends? Now, in Nigeria, it's a problem. Yes, at the point of entry, they are coming in because they still have some value. Computers that have been used and forgotten in some parts of the world because we can't afford the new ones, or we bring them in. But then, how do we tackle the issue of they piling up after they've served their useful purpose? That is what
when I asked why we've embraced e-waste, I was asking because we seem to cling to them. We don't even see them as waste. If you go to some parts of the country, of the city, in every part of the country, I think basically you find scrap markets. Even when you're tired of a particular item because you feel, oh, the life cycle of that item has expired, is no longer functioning, and you dispose even in your waste bin, you will find that there are collectors of these items with or without your permission. They come to collect them and they take them to the scrap market where they sell them. And when these items are sold in the scrap market, you have people who will disassemble them and begin to use the parts to do business. When they want to fix other items, they use them. So it's hardly ever seen as waste, except maybe when the person who is in possession of it at that particular time feels, I do not know what to use this for. But instead of dispose them, they just pile them continually, and you have more of them, so it becomes a heap. First of all, it's an eyesore. Secondly, the environmental pollution that comes from it, because when you find that other things are acting on it, for some of them are kept along drain sides, or you have them being exposed to rainfall, floods and other things, and so it constitutes environmental hazard. But I think that apart from making regulations, because there have been regulations about the import of certain kinds of items, particularly those that have expired, those that have been banned in other countries, but some Nigerians, they have a way of smuggling these things into the country. But I think one of the root cause is poverty, not being able to afford new items, not being able to afford the ones that are been upgraded, or the latest brand, latest models of those kind of items, make people want to keep patronizing the waste market, the e-waste markets.
Okay, beyond the idea of poverty being a factor that encourages the recycling of e-waste or electronics, it is not that some cannot buy the new ones. There's a perception that when it comes from outside Nigeria, it has quality. We have some locally manufactured electronic gadgets here that people will not patronize. Essentially, they will tell you that, okay, there's something called original fake or original second-hand. They will tell you that instead of buying the so-called new ones, bring in these used ones from the Western world, then they will still function more than yours. So that speaks to quality control at the point of production here in Nigeria. And that's one of the factors. Then, you spoke about regulation. Who is strengthening? How regulated is this regulation itself? Now, it is one thing to make laws and say, okay, these and these are forbidden, but how do we enforce it? Because most of the times, if you're not careful and you look closely enough, those who are meant to enforce regulation are the ones even encouraging it for some pecuniary gains, okay? So we need to, as a people, be very conscious of the health implications of all this. Like you mentioned, in the scrap market, yes, those items that we call waste find value there because there are still some components. But in the point of extraction, we are not even safety conscious. When you are, a lot of these components have lead as a critical ingredient there. Now, lead is harmful to the human system, but how many people can see lead and even know that this is lead in the first place, let alone what lead does to the body?
That is why the sector has to be sanitized. For those who want to recycle, it has to be organized in a sense that there are certain items that can be allowed into the scrap market for recycling. There are certain items that should not at all be seen anywhere. So maybe a kind of reorganizing it so that when e-waste are generated, whether by users here in Nigeria, there is a way you dispose them. I watched a video where some Nigerians living in the UK were complaining about how the environmental body did not allow them dispose of their waste just like that. They had furniture that they were not using anymore. So they thought, oh, since they are not usable by me anymore, so I can just dispose them in the regular bin. And so whoever wants to take them afterwards, or those who are in charge of waste disposal will just dispose them. But they were fined for doing that. And they were told for every waste that you generate, you don't dispose them the same way. There are ways you dispose of certain waste. So maybe if we have that kind of arrangement where for e-waste, there are ways you dispose them. So the collectors know where to assign those to, that it is not in the open, it doesn't begin to constitute environmental and health risk. Maybe that will help. And then for the recycling, we develop a sector where every item that can be recyclable goes to the right people who have the right knowledge and perhaps right equipment and within the right space to recycle, that it does not pose threat to others. I
agree with you on that. So let's extend the conversation and talk to one of our in-house experts, our tech enthusiast and economic analyst. Ahmed Jayola is always around for us to talk to. Well, he plays in this field, not in the field of e-waste. We're talking about gadgets, talking about electronics, talking about computers. Those are his items that he works with. And I'm sure at some point he must have been wondering, how do we dispose all this? Because you go to Ikeja, for instance, Computer Village, and you see heaps and heaps of all these obsolete gadgets that no longer have any use apart from the nuisance value that they are contributing. Ahmed Jayola, you're welcome on board. Good morning to you.
Thank you. Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm very good. So, we've been talking about e-waste and how it affects the health of Nigerians, how it affects the environment in Nigeria, and how it has constituted, nuisance to us as a country. Where do we go from here?
Okay, so the issue with e-waste is much more of a, how do I explain it? Knowledge problem. Knowledge in the sense that when people really understand and are informed about the implications of having computer parts and certain electronic parts lying around, you won't have issues of like this conversation coming up. However, the conversation about e-waste is growing every day because you have a lot of electronic materials that have taken over conversation in the market, that have taken over conversation in the world at large. You have a lot of, without mentioning countries, you have a lot of electronic parts that are going into vehicles, that are going into computers, that are going into every single device. Right now, there is a lot of, when these things possibly go bad, a lot of e-waste that is sitting around us because there are no, shall I say, second use opportunities for these things. So at the end of the day, they become waste. But in the countries where many of these things are made, these things can be recycled, but there are no recyclable opportunities down here. You don't have recycling plants that are specifically focusing on the what do you call it, kind of chemicals, the kind of materials, raw materials that are being used to make most of these gadgets. So, and in fact, to a very large extent, you don't have a situation where people even understand the kind of waste they are disposing, because ordinary nylons, people still don't have an understanding of how they are going to dispose it. Talk less of computers or mobile phones or serious gadgets that need to be split into parts first and all those. There's a lot of knowledge that is not existent in the e-waste conversation.
So whose responsibility is it to provide knowledge? Is it the educational system or the manufacturer or governments?
Okay, so the challenge is the government plays a huge role in the conversation. Even though manufacturers have, shall I say, waste disposal guidelines, but most of the time you don't see it clearly written on either the front page of the manual or even the middle of the manual. They usually hide it in the fine print, you know, where the contract is.
That people will not even have the time.
You will not even have the time to go and read those things. So someone needs to, you know, take, you know, important, shall I say, someone has to be deliberate about going to look for, okay, so how do I dispose this thing when it is time for me to dispose it? A lot of people don't even see the equipment or device as disposable. They would rather just, you know, stack it up in the house and just, that's the radio that I bought 1565. You know,
attachments.
There is
Attachment
exactly, you know, and the reason is, you know, when you buy something that you don't see being made around you, there's this, should I call it, there's this awe that it has, you know, with us when you've bought a phone, and when you bought the phone it was like, wow, I bought a phone, and now the phone is bad and you can't use it, but the wow factor never goes away, and you don't want to lose that wow factor. You want to attach stories to it, the first girl that I asked out with it, the first phone call I made, the first business I did, you know, you are attaching a lot of things to it, so it gains value with you. And instead of really throwing it away, you just put it in your wardrobe somewhere, and everybody is coming, when are we going to dispose this thing, and just leave it there?
Honestly, speaking about attachment to gadgets, I've seen a 60-year-old man that still showed me his first toy ever in life, the very first toy. The mom kept it for him, and he has kept it and shown his children and even his grandchildren. I'm like, okay, really? I was wild, to be sincere, really. I felt, okay, if you have an idea, if I can see the very first toy that was bought for you, that is something. And beyond that, you find some creative Nigerians and Africans talk about making use of these wastes creatively. We've read stories of a lady who turns used tires into works of art. With tires, they can make anything. We know people who have used them, broken spoons, broken cutleries to make works of art, and they can draw a whole human being with broken, you know, cutleries. Well, you will say they are actually converting waste to wealth in a particular context. Well, how much of that can they take up from the market? How much of waste materials can they soak from the ecosystem and convert into beauty? That is another talk entirely. Okay. We have standing by on Zoom. Okay. Dr. Bayero Agabi, who will be joining us very, very shortly, and because there are questions to answer, and one of them is this extended producer responsibility. They call it EPR, and that speaks to the responsibility of the producer to be in charge of the complete life cycle of a product. Take for instance, if you're manufacturing a computer now system for any part of the world, if we can enforce that EPR in such a way that the producers are aware that it is their responsibility to ensure that we know how this product will end finally. Meaning you begin to factor in sustainability into the manufacturing process, you begin to factor in biodegradability into the system, and so on and so forth. How much of this can we adopt in this country?
Well, that would have been very easy and possible if those products were actually manufactured here or sold first here. It is easier to do that when you're buying a new product. But when you're selling, or you've sold a product you manufactured to a specific country or to a user, you have those, you possibly have those instructions in the manual for the user. But when it becomes a second-hand item, so the person you manufactured and sold to has now resold to another, I don't think fairly used items, if any, except if it's been sold directly by the person who bought it. But when they're imported into the country, as we see lots of fairly used computers being sold into the country, I doubt if they do come with manuals. So at that point in time, it is not the responsibility of the manufacturer to know how that would be disposed. So it's only possible to track that when they are first items, or they are sold directly from the manufacturer to the consumer. But when it becomes a second-hand product, at that point in time, the producer does not have a control how they are disposed.
Yes, that becomes, that is us to our role as media practitioners, and your role as even a viewer out there. Even all of us are actually media workers in the context. Everybody has a phone. We need to begin to sensitize one another about the dangers of e-waste. Yes, we know that we cannot live our lives without electronics. One 5-year-old boy was asking his dad, how did you live your life without phone back then? Well, there was a time we didn't have phone. Much as we are in partnership with electronics forever, as the case may be. But then we should begin to tell ourselves. We should begin to tell ourselves the truth about the life cycles of these waste or these gadgets, because at some point, if everybody knows that, yes, it is harmful for me to not be responsible for how I recycle or how I take care of a particular waste, then it becomes easier for us to have a cleaner environment. Let us not forget that everything we throw at nature, nature gives back to us in triple fold. If you dump garbage in your water, in your rivers, trust me, flood is coming to visit you and take care of you in its own little way. And you don't want to experience the wrath of a raging storm or a raging flood anywhere in the world. Okay, let's go on a very short break now, and then when we come back, we'll return to this conversation about e-waste and how we can chart a way forward. Please don't go anywhere. A short break now, and we'll be back. Thank you for staying tuned to Early Exchange on Souk News. And before we went on that short break, we were talking about the challenges of e-waste management in Nigeria, and why we have a lot of the problems, because there is not so much awareness on it. And so we have today a guest that is standing by via Zoom. His name is Dr. Bayero Agabi. He is the President Nigeria Internet Group. I call it NIG. First and foremost, let us confirm that he can hear us clearly and we can hear him. Dr. Bayero Agabi, good morning and welcome to the show. Please confirm if you can hear me. Okay, while we're still waiting for him to get set, technically speaking, we were talking about how to, resolve this issue of e-waste problem in Nigeria. And I did mention earlier about the responsibility on the part of producer, which you have actually, responded to. Then there is this support for recyclers transition. At the local level, those we call recyclers are just people who just pick these gadgets here and there. There's a local name for them which I can't recall now. They just pick and they find their own ways of using it. But there are standard recycling procedures. There are global best practices in the world that can be latched onto. The government and probably other stakeholders apart from the government, that is other private stakeholders, should probably come to the aid of these people and let us educate and turn a lot of these local recyclers who still conduct it as business as usual, using their own local knowledge, and they're still as crude as they can be. Maybe we should just come together as a people and educate and step up their knowledge base so that we can have a cleaner world. That's just one aspect to the whole thing here.
Yeah, and I think it should begin from educating people first at the point you buy certain items, where you buy it, whether as first-hand item or as a second-hand item. You should be educated on the lifespan of that particular product, and then you should be educated on how to dispose it. Now, when that is done, for instance, you're buying a television set, from whatever shop you're buying that television set, it should tell you this is a lifespan of the television set. After the expiration of that, you should dispose it this way. And then we should reorganize our waste collection policy. Our waste collection policy should be in such a way that you don't dispose every item in the same way. And sometimes labeling, proper labeling should be done. So when you're disposing an electronic product, for instance, you should label the particular product. And so it now depends on the collectors to know what area to channel this waste to. So the recyclers can from there source whatever they would need. And then because we had Ahmed Jayola talk about there are things that are needed, there are equipment that are needed for certain recycling. So if we have that in place, perhaps for every state there is a central recycling hub for certain electronic equipment. So when they are collected as waste, they are then taken to that area. So every recycler who is registered, who has the proper knowledge, can then source for the scrap that they need to recycle, and then it comes out cleaner, it comes out into other products. It doesn't become pollution, it doesn't become a menace.
Yes, speaking about pollution, speaking about it becoming a menace, one area we don't look at when we talk about the problems that these e-waste constitute, that we don't look at their groundwater contamination capability. People look at waste as just, okay, this is just, the issue is the heaps that we have are an eyesore. It's beyond eyesore, it could be health sore, because when you have a heap of e-waste there, like I said earlier, there are lead components in many of them. There are other chemicals beyond lead that are even more dangerous, more hazardous to human health than lead. And these, find their way into surface waters. Some of them percolate deep into the ground, and when rain falls, rain carries them into our rivers, our oceans. And if you consider the fact that in a lot of places in Nigeria, people are still drinking water from the stream, whether they like it or not. Whether drinking or washing clothes with it, they are still having exposure to the bodies of water. And when lead enters your body via percolation or via, drinking, gulping accidentally, you have no idea the danger it does. So we should look at that and, sensitize the populace.
That is even far-reaching. But if you want to look at the immediate effects of these things, some persons dispose by themselves. You you live in a spacious compound and you have electronic items that you no longer use because they've stopped working. Instead of disposing, you just by yourself dump them somewhere in your compound. And you know, a lot of persons plant the vegetables that they use by themselves, still within that environment. So you dump them somewhere, rain falls on them, they are there year after year, so they're just spreading the contamination into the ground, and you also have plants there that you consume. So it even has a direct effect on people who buy and keep these things even before where they are disposed centrally. There are landfills where these things are even disposed, and you know that they are even mixed with other things, which even makes them more harmful. And then at the time, the components of these things which are not healthy to people begin to spread into other parts like the ground, and then they get into the water through rainfall and flooding and other things. So it's something that people should begin to take personal responsibility for, and not, because some persons will tell you when they buy an item, if you tell them this thing, you should have disposed it of, they ask you, is this still working? Does it still function? So until it stops functioning, some persons don't even see the reason to discard it.
Okay. Beyond individuals, I think this is more of a policy issue at a particular level, because if these materials don't find their way into our communities in the first place, into our country in the first place, we're not going to be talking about how to manage the waste, because I think at the policy level we should ensure that there are frameworks for guiding what comes into the country. In some climes, you can't just take anything into their country, whether as waste material or as used gadgets. No, it doesn't happen there. People may not be able to protect themselves, but the government owes us a duty to, because the government is the custodian of our borders. I don't stand at the border and you don't stand there in the first place, and we have people who are managed. How do we regulate what comes into the country and save people who don't see the need to save themselves, speaking in the context? So this is key, and this can be done at this pedestrian level. It is one thing for us to talk about it as presenters, as media people. It is for another, it's another thing for the government to listen. How much of what we say are they even listening to? And this speaks to policymakers and shapers who advise the government, even as we have ministers coming on board, the new ones. If you're watching, please take note. This is one of the issues we want you to address. E-waste coming to the country, Nigeria cannot continue to be a dumping ground for waste items from other parts of the world. That's just my take on that.
And I think we need to make it easy for people to turn to the alternative of having the patronizing scrap or e-waste from other countries, because it's expensive. It's expensive to actually buy new product. I know some persons have the mentality that if it's not something from outside of the shores of this country, then of course you can't be sure of the quality. But if they can afford the new ones, they wouldn't have to buy scrap. Come on, everybody likes new and fine things. But because it's very expensive to buy those things, then it becomes a problem. So maybe we should be looking at encouraging local production, or even if it's assembling of some electronic items, so that they are cheaper or they are quite affordable by people. So that would discourage the patronage of e-waste, because that has become a market. What you call, what the other countries call waste is actually markets. Yes. In other countries, particularly developing countries. So I think the customs too need to do more to ensure that there is restriction of the inflow of such into the country. Well,
there is a talk in our local parlance that says before the advent of a foreign item, there was a local equivalence to it. For every gadget that comes in, there could be some local equivalence. And for real, we wouldn't say we don't have that technology resident here. Maybe not as sophisticated as we have it anywhere else in the world. But then, while we are asking people to, develop capacity, we as consumers should also change our orientation. If you have a made in Aba product, would you buy it when you see that label, made in Aba? Meanwhile, made in Aba products might actually have local components that could be biodegradable. We've seen cutleries that are made with bamboo tree or bamboo sticks. Would you rather pick a spoon or a fork that's made from bamboo as against one made with iron, which is not biodegradable. We all know that bamboo has a life cycle and it can be biodegraded.
I think it should be about functionality first,
functionality, yes.
Before the brand name.
Okay, thank you very much. We've spoken extensively about e-waste, the dangers, and what we need to do as individuals and as government to ensure that we save our nation and save our environment. We have just one environment. We're not going anywhere. Yes, I know that the Earth, there are other planets, okay, and people are making attempts to go to Mars and others, but the Earth is still the only habitable planet that we have today. So it is our responsibility to protect the Earth so that we can stay here for as long as possible. And let us be conscious of the generation that is coming behind. Let us not destroy where they will occupy when we are all gone. Thank you. So we go on a very short break now. When we are back, listen, what next?
Yes, we'll be looking at migration and how it affects global economy.
So let's go on a break now.
Migration, whether international, rural or urban, plays a crucial role in shaping the development of countries of origin and destination. There are the various dimensions of migration and its complexities affecting economic, social and political development. Perhaps effective collaboration between stakeholders may address the complexities around migration. From the days of the biblical Abraham, humans have always migrated from one place to another. The reasons are as diverse as the migrants themselves, but they all translate to better opportunities.
I feel people migrate because of economic reasons. They feel they could get better life elsewhere where they are going, most especially when we are talking about rural to urban migration. You get more job opportunities in the urban areas than you get in the rural areas. Then maybe electricity and some other basic amenities of life.
People migrate for so many reasons: for better economy,
for good working conditions, living conditions.
It's the money, the good life, the environment, because I think over there it's kind of conducive for people to stay.
Migration influences growth, diaspora remittances, cultural exchange and social cohesion, but not without challenges.
There are different challenges though, but I feel finance is one of the main issues. Most people, they tend to sell their properties or even borrow just to go out, leave Nigeria and face it, and it's not easy. And the life over there, I feel it's not easy also, but I think it will be easy if you have money, more like you are what to do here, then you go over there. It's easier for you to adapt with their system.
I mean, it's not easy to cope over there, trying to be with people you don't know, and then culture shock, trying to adapt to their cultures, and then language too can be a barrier, knowing that you have to learn other languages apart from our English.
Most people that try to enter a country to another country through the borders, some of them don't have qualifications in paper, they require paper, and some of them might be terrorists trying to break to that country, so which the security forces will not allow them to go in.
Migrants display exceptional strength and courage, enriching the world with their stories, skills, and unwavering hope for success in their new destinations. Recognizing the vital role of immigrants in shaping communities globally, it becomes imperative to implement policies and best practices that cater to the rights and needs for all migrants. And this some countries have been able to do.
Nigerians, we are strong breeds. They are stronger people that they know they are strong people that are good enough for the job, and of course they are ready to accept people to help them fill their workspace, because I think they are short-staffed now.
For example, now nurses now, I think Canada, Nova Scotia, Alberta, and so many other provinces, they want to recruit Nigerians because they feel that we are hardworking, we can do what it takes over there. So yes, I think they are accepting, and it's a good skill for them as well. So yeah.
A comprehensive approach that focuses on infrastructure development, job creation, social integration, and fair immigration policies will help governments better manage and support urban, rural, and international migration. Grace Komolafe, Souk News.
Welcome back to the studios of Souk News, and we're still on earlier exchange. Okay, the issue of migration is as old as humanity. The movement of Abraham from his own native land to the promised land, migration. Israelites moving to Egypt, migration. Israelites leaving Egypt to another promised land, migration. Moses leading a pack, migration. It has been with us for as old as life has existed with human beings. And it will continue because there will still be economic disparities across the world. We will never get to a point, I don't think, where every nation is equally strong, economically speaking. As long as the pasture remains greener in a particular context, people will still move. In 2022 alone, we have over 282 million people moving from one part of the world to another, whether it is immigration or emigration, as the case may be. And who knows, the person next seat might be thinking of jackpotting, like they always say also. I don't know. Blessing.
Where's the person next seat?
I wouldn't know, really.
Well, you need to know that Africa is one of the most important source and destination of migration. Africans migrate and people come into Africa as well. And there are lots of reasons why people migrate. Some, it may be to find work, it may be to join family, it may be because they're trying to flee a conflict area, different reasons. And migration comes with both positive and negative benefits for every country. For those who are migrating to other countries, it could be that they're taking on to the new host country skills, expertise, and they'll also be working to develop the economy of that country, which is what we've seen happen when a lot of people migrate. And like I mentioned, that Africa is one of the regions where people migrate a lot from to other places in search of perceived greener pasture. Now, this also comes with lots of benefits. How do the economies, the people that have high rates of immigrants benefits And how do economies where there's high level of emigration, how are they impacted? These are some of the things that we'll be looking at today as we consider migration, its impact on global economy.
Yes, we talk about diaspora remittances. Globally in 2020, it was $540 billion. Okay, there are issues we can't speak to because we are not experts on migration. So we have someone who is standing by via Zoom. His name is Dr. Shehu Hamad Yekin. He is the program coordinator of Bestowa International University, Benin Republic. He is a trained international relations academic. I call him an egghead in that particular space. Good morning, doctor. If you can hear us, please, let's have your greetings. Dr. Yakin.
Good morning. Good morning.
Okay. Thank you for having me. I'll allow my colleague to start the line of questioning because we have a lot to ask you. Blessing, fire the first shots.
Okay, thank you for joining us, Doctor. Talking about migration broadly, let's begin from home, Africa. How has migration affected Africa, whether talking about immigration or emigration? Hello, can you hear me? Dr. Shehu Hamad.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. So looking at the impact of migration on Africa, what has been the impact, whether when we look at the rate of emigration from Africa or rate of immigration into Africa?
Okay. Thank you. The immigration, I say, when people move, it's movement of people from one place to another place. Now, those people that moved in the early time, they moved to learn, to get acquainted with the culture of the foreign land, bring it home to develop our own community. But nowadays, the rate of immigration we have is that our expatriates, the professionals, have been lost to the Western world. Why those ones coming are just coming to grab from us what we have and take it downward to develop their own side. For example, majority of the people that are moving now nowadays, they are moving because of the greener pasture to better their life. And majority don't even remember home. And those people that remember home, they are coming in form of coming to take more from us, not to invest per se. And those ones that invest, they are targeting every profit from their investment. That's what I can say for now.
Okay, doctor. In essence, you would say that Africa has not really benefited from global migration. We've been a victim. Is that what you're saying? That Africa has been a victim of migration, not a beneficiary of it?
We have not benefited much from migration. And I can give you an example. Nigeria, for example, majority of the people moving are those ones that are trained here that we call our experts. And instead of them to be retained in the economy, to develop this economy, majority of them have moved out to the Western world to help demonstrate their expertise in order to boost the economy there. Why we here, we are not benefiting from it. And we are the one that trained them. So can I give you an example of that?
Go ahead.
To train a nurse in Nigeria, government, if you attend government schools, you know the cost of training a nurse if it is a private institution. But if you attend the government institutions, I will call that it has been subsidized because the money we paid, especially with the federal schools, they are not much. And at the end of the day, some of them got the knowledge. Instead of those ones to be retained in this economy, they are out there working for the developed nations because of the what they will get in terms of salary remuneration that are better than our own. That's one. Secondly, the working environment, which is better than our own here. But it is the government of Nigeria that trained them. So Africa, we are losing. We are losing. If you go to America today, they say one of the, yes, we are losing.
If you say we're losing, what about diaspora remittances? Wouldn't you consider that some gain?
is in two ways. Number one, some of them send money, maybe to their family or to help them build houses and whatever is coming. Another thing is that some of them, it can even come in together in form of an association or in group. Look at what they lack in their community and come to build those things. For example, maybe we are lacking hospitals in our communities. So it means those things are coming. But at the end of the day, you will discover that the expatriates that are needed or the experts that are needed in these areas are no longer available. For example, if we lack a hospital in my area and someone is coming to build a hospital there, and the nurses that are supposed to work there and the medical doctors are out there working for the Western nations, how do we benefit? We are the one losing, from my own perspective.
Okay, like you said, people make remittances either to their families or to their communities, and the money is still within our own financial system. That's on the one side. On the other side, one will expect that when people migrate from one part of the world to the other, they get better in the area of skills, especially if they go to more developed areas. But you did say that, yes, we don't come back here to work for our own people. So expertise is flowing out and it's not coming back in. But let's look at what happens to our people that travel out of the country. There is the issue of crisis of acceptance, social integration into other culture. How much of a problem is it? What are the challenges faced by African immigrants who leave their fatherland and they go out there in search of greener pastures?
Please, can you repeat the question?
The question is, what are the experiences, the peculiar challenges that Africans who leave their fatherland for other parts of the world face? What are the challenges they face because they are in a new land and there is culture shock, like they call it, in your field?
Yeah, but I think it's in two ways. One of the challenges, let's start from the weather. When you get there, the weather is different. You need to acclimatize to their own weather. It's one of the challenges faced by our people. And in terms of the culture, in Africa, majority of our culture is on community-based, communitarianism. Why the Western world practice majorly individualism. So it's two ways. If they get there, like let's say, for example, the people moving from this side of Sahara Africa, where we like greeting too much, we follow greeting. When you get there, in the Western world, maybe they don't follow it. It will be hard for you to even live with some of them in some instances. And the majority of them live behind their curtains where they see what is going on and report it. They report it majorly. If you do something wrong, it will get to the authority easily. But in this, those people that have been there for a long time, when they get used to their culture there, they find it difficult to come back home because our own community does not even embrace the type of West, even in terms of dressing. Someone told me that where he's living, that they always dress half naked, that it's not comfortable with that. Forget about your own Islamic value. You are in a foreign land now. You have to adjust to their culture. So in the community where they live over there, the culture and our own culture, they are not the same. And for them to be accepted into that culture, one, some of them need to study what is on ground, and the government need to orientate their people, that the people that are coming, they are experts, they are professionals that are coming to add value to their own economy. So they should embrace them rather than rejecting them or leading to crisis or fight between them.
Many countries now begin to develop policies that encourage migration of people, particularly skilled workers. Now in Nigeria and in Africa in general, how can we work around that to encourage the kind of migration that favors us?
Let's start from, for instance, the reason why some countries design a policy that welcome the people coming from the other side to their own side is, one, maybe they lack labor force. They lack labor force. And we have it plenty in the developing nations. underdeveloped or the third world countries. So they want majority of them to come and better them because they lack that space. So when they design it, they must also have a way by which they orientate their people so that they can absorb those people into their own economy without a crisis. There are problems.
Okay, we lost Dr. Ahmad there. And,
Person, we should have him back. Okay, looking at cultural integration, which he mentioned before he began to talk about ways countries develop policies to ensure that they benefit much from migration. You find that in some places, because you've had different migrant communities over time in a particular place. Okay, let's get back to the conversation on developing policies that ensure that countries obtain the most benefit from migration. So, Dr. Hamid, can we get back to the conversation? Are you there? Hello, Dr. Hamid Yakin. We can't hear you.
You are muted.
You seem to have muted your audio.
Okay, speak. Okay. Continue, sir.
Please, can I get the question again?
Okay, of course, I can hear you now. All right, we were talking about making policies that ensure that countries obtain the most benefit from migration. Talking about African countries now, and you were doing the comparison, talking about that in other countries, in the Western countries particularly, they need labor, so they design their migration policies to encourage skilled workers to move in. What do we need here? What do we need to design our migration policies around?
We have some agencies that work on these people that are migrating, that they consult them. One, government needs to get those agencies, move them closer, orientate them, get involved in the process of these people moving, so that one, when they get there, they will treat them, they will know that their government is aware of their being there, and they will give them a good, a soft landing or a good, how do I call this, environment to work and live with people peacefully. Because if you are being, is between you and the agent or the agencies that are working on this migration stuff, without government get involved in it, when they get there, some of them may be maltreated, and the government, since they are not aware of it, and some may even be underpaid for what they are doing. There are differences between these skilled and unskilled workers or semi-skilled. Majority of them, if they don't get the proper document to cross over to the other side. Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you, sir.
Okay. Some of them are not properly. I attended a seminar in Togo where a French citizen was telling us in that orders, majority of their people they want people to come in without proper document, so that when they give them opportunity to work for them, they are being short paid. They will not give them the normal remuneration they are entitled to, because they know that you don't have the necessary document to even live in their country. Some of them get put in the back door. But we want the agencies and the government of the sending country to get involved in this, so that the government of the receiving country will know that our government are also aware of their coming, and they will give them the soft landing and a better environment to work with better remuneration.
Okay, I think my colleague was trying to ask you how we can make our own country attractive to others, so we can attract immigrants.
Okay, good.
Yes, that's what she would like you to speak to. There is this brain drain
okay.
and brain
I got the question now.
Okay.
That's
so
are we going to also
attractive?
Attract people coming to our own side?
Yes.
Yes.
Very good. I think one of the things that we are lacking here, the major problem we are facing is one, the leadership problem. They lack visions for the country. The same policy we have been repeating since in the 60s is still there today, and we have not achieved anything. It is the former governor of Oyo State, the later governor, Ajumobi. He did something that I like. He created a technical university. In that technical university, people can go there, learn, send them abroad to go and learn better and come back. Not that they will retain them there. You learn about different skills and come back because it's a technical university. So that type of idea is okay for us to, for example, if we have medical equipment being moved from the Western world to the Africa, and we don't have people here to even repair it when they have issues. And you have technical university there where you can train people in those different lines. Once you get it right in that line, that what we are looking for abroad, we can as well get it at home. People will be attracted to come to our economy. Secondly, create a good enabling environment for people to work with better remuneration. If they know that the poor, the salary that are being earned in this part of the world are poor, nobody will come. People look for an environment where you earn better and you are well protected. Your job is well protected. That's another way of attracting people to our side. And lastly, how do we attract people to our own side as well? Is for our government to give these private individuals, the private business, assist them, let them develop. If the Buhari government did something of recent, before they left, they devalued the currency. When they devalue the currency, it means what they will be getting in this part of the world will be cheaper compared to the other part of the world. So people will want to come and patronize us. But do we have those things that they want to patronize us on ground? If you are saying that our money, the value of our money is lesser, so people can come and patronize our economy the way Chinese people did it in the past and they got it right. Do we have those things in place? They were trying to do rice, that's by a rice pyramid, or they call it one name. At the end of the day, do we see anybody coming to buy Nigerian rice? Nobody is coming to patronize. Even the Nigerians are also not patronizing the Nigerian rice. They prefer the foreign rice. It means we have to create, where the government needs to give a good soft landing for the private sectors for them to develop and to be competitive enough with the other companies around the world or the industries. Not that we are producing something of substandard and you want people to patronize those things. So we have different ways by which we can develop our own economy to attract the foreigners to also come and work here.
Okay, talking about foreigners, now people migrate for different reasons. It could be for because of poverty, they're looking for greener pastures. It could be there is a conflict in their area and so they want to move on to another area where there isn't conflict. Making entry into the country, the requirements for entry into a country, looking at Nigeria, where some countries in Africa also look at Nigeria as a place of greener pastures. What should be the policy regarding those who are coming into Nigeria to ensure that as much as we want to make it a country that is receptive to people who can also contribute, we'll look at the security implications. We'll look at the contribution of these persons who are coming into the country so it doesn't even become a problem to Nigeria. Immigration policies.
Thank you. Let me start from this perspective. That's number one. I've gone to some countries in Africa. Nigeria, we are not hostile. Our own culture, and value. We are friendly to people. People can come because all part of Nigeria will welcome visitors very well. Now, how do we now create a policy that will allow these foreigners to come and work here? One, because our border is porous, no doubt. The border is porous, anybody can come in. But the government needs to put in place the immigration policy, like statistics. To go on statistics to know properly registered. Go to Ghana. If you're a foreigner, before you can start work, you have to first of all register with an organization there before they can allow you to work and get your permit to work. In Nigeria, some foreigners are here, they don't even have work permits and they are working. There is also many in some African countries like that. We need to work on that so that anybody coming in, you get a work permit and we get your statistics accurate. I think that's one of the policies we can put in place to control the people coming to our own side to work. That's one. Secondly, creating enabling environment for them to work. An expert is coming to control. And the people here, which are the indigenous, to be allowed to work hand in hand with all these people so that we can learn more. We call it on-the-job training. You can learn as well from them. Not that they are coming with their expert rate, demonstrate it and go. No, you can move close to them, learn better before they go back. And lastly, when you look at Nigerian government, sometimes we discover that even with the policies of government, sometimes they are not serious about it. Let me give you an instance. There was a law made by a custom boss during the Buhari era that from 20 kilometers to the border of 40 kilometers, then there's no, they should stop selling of our petrol. Fuel, 20 kilometers. What about those people that are doing genuine business? Because the assumption is that they are taking all these petroleum products out of the country, and it is government of Nigeria that subsidize it. But we forget about those people that are doing legit business in those areas, in those. What about the indigenous? We don't consider them. So, but if you want to attract foreigners to come, you have to create an enabling environment first. And in terms of security, that's the problem we have majorly now in the country. In fact, during the last regime, kidnapping, Boko Haram issues, and plenty of them. Who want to come and invest his own money in that type of economy? So you have to work on the security first. And that is the reason why people have been fighting for this community policing. When you see something, you report. If I see a strange face in my area, I report immediately. Who are you? What are you coming to do? So that we get to know. We need to address the issue of security. Very well. Now, appointing the army chiefs, army leaders, no. Majority of them may be benefiting from this issue of insecurity. I don't want it to go. It's not. We need to be serious about it. If at all we want people to come and invest in our own economy. Many people are running away. They don't want to come because of the security issues, and the government must address it. It's beyond the appointment of security chiefs and whatever. What are they doing? How do we resolve it once and for all? What are the problems? Identify the problems. If people are not happy because of the bad policy of the government, the people living in the border community that I said earlier, some people left on land. They want to pass through the desert to go to the Western world to go and work. And the government went there, maybe Libya, Agadez, they brought them back. We brought them back. You don't even have something on ground for them. Because if you want to create, if you want to bring a policy, you must look for at least a soft land, something that, okay, these are the things people are doing. How do we give them other things in the meantime so that they get it? Nothing. You just ask them to stop working like that. Are they not going to survive with their children and family? Okay. So you keep their own work, and you take their own work away from them, and at the end of the day, you don't give them alternative. So we have to create an enabling environment to attract the investors to come. If not, in terms of security, in terms of our even culture, because the person coming to invest may come with his own different ideas and culture. How do we integrate that person into our own community and benefit from it?
Okay. Let me attempt something in the area of foreign diplomacy now, which is not my forte, it's your forte essentially. Let's take a look at what the UAE got right. In the 80s, UAE was not what it is today. Now, people go to Dubai and they have some kind of, they feel at home in Dubai. Dubai has become a major tourist center in the world. And even in the field of sports of recent, we've seen that the UAE is attracting some of the biggest names in football to ensure that they come into their own football league and make it work for them. Now, what can we learn from the UAE to make our country a destination of choice. You've spoken about economic angles to things. What other things can we do? What templates can we, adopt from the UAE and how it's attracting a lot of interest and inflow into its country that we can latch onto in Nigeria here? Using UAE as an example.
Thank you. UAE started from trade. They got it right through trade. And they use trade to attract people to their own economy. They use trade to attract people to their own economy. In Nigeria, how do we get it right to attract people or copy the idea of UAE? One, the problem with Nigeria is that we don't even value what we have. We don't value what we have until we begin to value what we have that can give us a kind of a way by which we can develop the economy. One, we have the seaports. Even if the seaport is not the largest in West Africa, but in terms of importation, I can say is the largest because majority of us. Now, if you don't encourage the trade locally for people to come and patronize what you have, it will be difficult. We don't support our infant industries. Even the infant industries we're talking about, we have the Bank of Industry or whatever that are assisting people to grow on this, or do we patronize them? If I see Abba made shoes, am I going to go for it or the Italian one? So we don't even encourage our own locally made products. We need to patronize what we have. During Obasanjo era, Obasanjo always put on, Baba Obasanjo will put on the local made, this fabric, the local one. To tell you that, let's patronize our own local market for people to see it outside and come and patronize it with us. So that's one in terms of trade. You mentioned even the league. Is our league, the sports league or the football league, is it attractive for foreigners to come? When people are being owed, they don't pay them, and the remuneration is poor. That is why some of them even look outside for a better one. How do government come in and assist in that area so that we have, because like you, do we even watch our local league? It's Chelsea and Arsenal that we watch. How do we also develop our own local league so that people will come and participate in it? No. We have a lot of things to work on in that area as well. Then look at the road. We have the good road network. If you are coming from Ghana, you will be enjoying the good road until you get to Semeboda and cross to the Nigerian side. Between Semeboda and Badagry roundabout, you will pity Nigeria. The road are nothing to write home about. And you see 101 security posts checking. And up or all, we still have illegal things coming to Nigeria.
Picking it up from
so
illegal
it means
things.
we are not ready.
Picking up from illegal things, one of the things that migration has also facilitated is illegal trade. For instance, organ harvesting, sexual slavery, and there are some countries that are targets where people are gotten to participate in this trade forcefully. How can we curb that? What are the policies to help curb that?
Government needs to create employment for people. Majority of these people that engage in this, some may not even like it, naturally, but it's as a result of them to survive. For example, a university graduate, stay at home for a good 10 years, nothing tangible doing. And there is nowhere he can get a good loan to start something for him or herself. We move. Look for something that will better their life. And I think one of the countries being targeted on that is Nigeria, because we have the population. Some people, they don't send you, as long as they can get money from it, they are ready to do it. Now, government should create employment for people. I discovered that in our NYC orientation camp, there is a program called Said. That Said has not yielded any positive results to me, because that's where you will target them, give them the necessary ideas. The majority are sleeping there. They don't learn anything. Because if they don't get the idea right, even if you give them loan to start a business, that business will later collapse. So governments need to go on a policy that will assist these people coming up, the youth. There is something that happened during Buhari regime that ends us or end this, end that. Instead of them to address the problem, it's gone. The youth. How will you use force to solve the problem of the youth when they were talking about the problem they are facing? Majority of them did not want to go into that. This one is engaging in Yahoo, whatever. If you give them an enabling environment to work, you create a policy that absorb them. Government can start from statistics, as I'll always say. We have 1 million undergraduates now, and some of them in the next 5 years will be graduates. What are the preparations to absorb these ones into the economy? How do we prepare ahead of time? Not that after graduation you are now looking for a way to absorb. No. Okay. If government is telling you that there's no work, there's no work.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Shehu Ahmad Yakin, for that insightful analysis there. We would have loved to continue because we are just getting to some other cogent things, but maybe one of these days we'll have you back on the show where we can take a deeper look at the issue of migration. At the end of it all, it is our responsibility from your submission to make our country attractive for people to come in. We shouldn't just be on the losing end of the migration. We should be talking about winning the battle of migration, encouraging immigration from expert hands that can actually help to build our economy as against losing our best brains out. For every brain drain, there's a brain gain somewhere. So it's about positioning. How positioned are we to ensure that we are on the gaining side of the brain, not on the draining side? And that is very critical and instructive for all of us here. Blessing.
Yes, up next is Business Tips with Austin Okere. Stay tuned.
When you sit in the driver's seat of a car for a long time, you are the leader, you are ahead, the windshield begins to look like the rear view mirror. Instead of seeing a future of possibilities, you reminisce over and focus on a glorious past. Many times you go to a new restaurant or cinema or supermarket, there's a new kid on the block and everybody's flocking there. The experience is fantastic. And after a couple of years, when you go back, there is a significant decline in the standards and it's just gone the way of all the other ones. Eventually a new one comes, but the cycle repeats itself. And I think the issue really is, why does it happen? It probably does happen because when you sit in the driver's seat of a car for a long time, you are the leader, you are ahead, the windshield begins to look like the rear view mirror. Instead of seeing a future of possibilities, you reminisce over and focus on a glorious past. And that's why you hear in the good old days. How can we stem this tide? If you look at Nigeria, for instance, the good old days were the days of University of Ibadan, University of Nigeria, Nsukka, Unilag. These were universities that we had foreigners coming to attend as a choice. Today, we look at them from the spectacle of the good old days. The first thing that one could do is to set up an entrepreneurial business, independent within the business, that challenges the status quo, that keeps the fire of creativity and innovation kindled. This is different from the cliche R&D department in a company, which is really oppressed under a hierarchy of bureaucratic reporting. This is the one that recommends that you self-cannibalize and transform the business instead of waiting for competition to do it for you. A more sustaining strategy, if you cannot do this, is to build within the business a culture that challenges the status quo, a culture that does not suppress the voices of where the rubber meets the road, the people that go and make it happen for the business, not just sitting in the boardroom. If you have this culture, then what you discover is that the culture constantly ask the question, are we still giving the user experience that we promised? And if not, how can we course correct and go back to being what the customers loved in the first place? The other thing that keeps us stagnated is when we have achieved our vision. And this is precisely what happened to the Roman Empire. That was a global dominant force for centuries. But after the vision expired and it was not refreshed, all we have left of it is the Colosseum or whatever remains of it in Italy and the Latin language. There is a need to refresh the vision whenever you have arrived at the vision point, typically every 5 years. It will be interesting to know at what spectrum your company is on this scale.
More than 1 million people die from hepatitis every year. The seriousness of this reality gives momentum to this year's theme, which says, one life and one liver. It is a call to everyone to act quickly to eliminate viral hepatitis and ensure testing and treatment are available to those who need it. People all over the world are already making a positive difference, and we want to celebrate their efforts and push for even more action. Viral hepatitis is a severe infection that can harm the liver, leading to liver damage, cirrhosis, liver cancer, and even death. There are 5 types of viral hepatitis: hepatitis A, B, C, D, and E. Hepatitis A and E usually get better on their own, but hepatitis B, C, and D can become long-lasting problem and cause serious health issues. Viral hepatitis is a major cause of death worldwide, causing 1.34 million deaths each year. It's as dangerous as HIV and AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. A significant 80% of liver cancer cases globally are linked to hepatitis B and C. Surprisingly, 90% of people with hepatitis B and 80% with hepatitis C don't know they have it. Not being aware of their infection put them at risk of developing deadly liver diseases and unknowingly spreading the infections to others. However, there is hope because there are effective vaccine and treatment for hepatitis B and a cure for hepatitis C. We can eliminate this disease, but it requires more people to know about it, understand it, and have access to affordable testing and treatment. The good news is that viral hepatitis is now part of the Sustainable Development Goals, SDG, and is a global strategy to fight it. This is a crucial moment in our battle against the disease, but without urgent support from politicians and our leaders, more lives will be lost and the epidemic will continue. World Hepatitis Day, observed every July 28, gives us the perfect opportunity to come together and raise awareness about viral hepatitis on a global scale. We can't wait any longer to take action. As the slogan says, don't ignore hepatitis, fight it. Don't let your life pay the price. Stay healthy and prevent hepatitis. Remember, you only have one life and one liver. Both are at risk. If you don't address hepatitis, your liver does more than 500 essential tasks every day to keep you healthy. So let's protect it by spreading knowledge and taking action against viral hepatitis. Chamaka Opara, Soup News.
The report by Chiamaka Opara brings us to the global commemoration of today. Today is July 28th and it is World Hepatitis Day, with this year's theme being one life, one liver. Of course, if you know you have one liver, then you will take the necessary action to ensure your liver is protected. We'll be joining, Dr. Rada will be joining us in the conversation today, talking about World Hepatitis Day, and he'll be talking to us about the ways of the ways hepatitis is transmitted, the different types of hepatitis, and also the prevention and cure of hepatitis. Now, Aya, knowing that you have one life and you also have one liver, what does that say to you?
Well, it says to me that I should take every care, and a very good one, of the one liver that I have. Essentially, the larger part of the human body works on what we call bilateral symmetry. You have the left kidney and the right kidney. You have the left lung, you have the right lung. You have the left hand, you have the right hand. But then you have just one liver. Whether it's on the left or right, I wouldn't know for real. And you have one hand.
So
now, what it means is that there is no assistant liver anywhere in the world.
No.
So if you lose your liver, you're gone. You're gone. It's just one life and one liver. And that is the theme of this year's World Hepatitis Day. Now, one of the issues is that it is not one of those things that you see that are being talked about a lot, because you don't get to see, the moment your liver starts having issues, you don't feel the symptoms instantly. It's a gradual thing.
It's a gradual thing,
and so
yes.
a day like this is very important to bring our awareness top notch and let us know that there are habits we have to discontinue so that we can preserve our liver throughout our entire lifespan, because it is meant to serve us throughout lifespan.
Yeah, serve it through a lifetime, because those who are on list for a liver transplant, they know how difficult to even get a donor. They know how expensive it is, and the lifestyle changes that will happen, significant lifestyle changes that will happen after you undergo such a procedure. So now that you have your liver intact, what are the things that you need to do? What are the things you need to avoid? How do you maintain liver health? What are the kind of food you should consume to enhance your liver health? Those are the things that the medical professional that we'll be having on the show will talk to us about. But personally, we should know that hygiene, maintaining good hygiene, is one way to ensure that you protect your body from any kind of disease. Sharing objects, sharp objects, is one thing that you should avoid, because contamination is very possible through that means. I'm not a medical professional, but I do know that through blood transfusion, through having contaminated blood come in contact with yours, is one way that you could be exposed to different kinds of disease. I do not think that hepatitis is any different from that. So maintaining very high personal hygiene, and also at hospitals where samples of people's body specimen are kept, should be one thing that there is high hygiene control around, so that you do not get contaminated with another person's body specimen.
A lot of us are not in the medical profession, but a day like this comes around just so we get to learn some basic health education about how to go about our lives. Now, I wouldn't know whether it is very, very authoritative or not, but I do hear that, you know, hepatitis, okay, there are different strains of hepatitis, okay? Yes. We have A, B, C, D, and E, so right? But there is a strain of hepatitis, that is the B. You don't even need to share sharp objects with anybody to get it. Sweat alone is enough. When somebody that is infected or that has its sweat, is all sweaty, and you lock up in a hog, or whatever, you can have it. Some would say that you should fear hepatitis B more than you fear HIV, because one can be prevented easily by some kind of interception or contraception. Is it contraception or whatever? Now, if it is true, which we'll ask our doctor in the house when he joins us, if it is true that through sweating you can contact hepatitis B, then it is a major problem. It should be feared even much more than HIV. But then I won't throw away your submission about, you know, hygiene, because it's about personal hygiene. I wouldn't know why somebody would use a blade or a razor in this part of the world at this time in our history, and I will still pick it up and use. You never can tell.
You know, we still live in a communal era, even though we are actually evolving because of technology and other things. But that's trust. I'll call it blind trust. You just look at somebody, and by your perception based on what you see, you think, oh, this person is healthy. I have nothing to fear. This person is my friend. And so we can share items. I can share needles. I can share blades. I can share sharp objects, even among family members. And because we have a culture, or a lot of persons have the culture of not going to the hospital to do a routine check, except when they fall ill, it is assumed that all is okay with the person. You don't see the person having any kind of symptom that tells you, oh, maybe something is wrong. They're not physical, even if they're having symptoms, but they're not quite physical, that makes you scared. What is this? Maybe a rash or something that looks unpleasant. So there's blind trust. People just assume, this person is clean or looks clean. This person is healthy, so I can share items with them.
Yes. Essentially, we have the challenge of diagnosis in this part of the world. There is not so much, education and sensitization about hepatitis, whether B, A, C, D, or E, as the case may be. And where the problem now lies is by the time it gets to a chronic stage, which is most of the times, which is when you get to know that you have an issue with your liver, it may be too late for you to correct it because it doesn't manifest symptoms at the very early stages. I think Africa has to still grapple with that particular challenge of not creating enough diagnostic centers for hepatitis B. Not many people, if you do a survey, not many people will tell you they know how to go about getting tested for hepatitis B and so on and so forth. And even those who have heard about it, even those who have heard about it don't have access to the treatment. They don't even know how to go about it. They just feel, oh, I can just take concussion somewhere and then I'll be fine. But it's deeper than that. Even the vaccine, there is vaccine actually for hepatitis B. How many persons are aware of it? Not to talk about where can they get vaccinated and the affordability of this things. Treatment, vaccines, these are things that the health authorities need to do more sensitization on, enlighten people in rural areas. And I think language is one thing that we should also consider, language barrier. We should begin to communicate, or health authorities should begin to communicate to people about diseases like hepatitis in languages that they can understand. For instance, in Nigeria, yes, we know that English is the official language of Nigeria, but you could do that in Pidgin. We could do that in local languages so that it gets to people to understand. You mentioned that there is a kind of hepatitis that can be transmitted by sweating. Well, we're here to confirm how true that is. But assuming that is true, we know the commuting system in several parts of Africa where people get crowded in a bus. So that already predisposes them to the risk of getting contaminated or contracting this kind of disease. So in that case, where vaccination is possible, people should be advised, people should be educated on how they can get vaccinated to prevent contracting this disease. Honestly speaking, that is where early vaccination comes into play. Yeah, we know that our medical Ministry of Health is doing what it can to ensure that we get our young people, children, vaccinated early against a lot of communicable diseases, and they even have it structured into their workflow to learn about different diseases that are communicable. But then we should do so much more, because if it is true that you can easily contact hepatitis B by sweating and so on and so forth, then it should be of grave concern to us to ensure that we carry people along from a very tender age, because like you said, this is a communal living that we have. We do things together, we work together, we live together, we sleep together, and we experience life together. So at every point of intersection with a fellow human being, we should understand that we need a bit of some protocols to ensure that we are safe and sound, so that we don't sacrifice our lives at the expense of, we don't indulge in communism, so to speak, at the expense of our lives. And when we have a doctor in the house, we'll look into some of this. But then, advocacy is key, and NGOs are doing it. There are NGOs that are, talking about this issue of hepatitis B, how it can be prevented, and even if you have it, how you can still, seek for assistance and be treated of it, because it is not as if there is no treatment for it. It's about how much do you know about it. And the affordability of the treatment as well. So I think that hepatitis should not be something that comes to the front burner, or shouldn't be an issue that comes to the front burner only on July 28th. It should be more than that. When when it was the time people were really talking about HIV, it became an everyday discourse. It became something that made front burner discussion
at every opportunity. And so people became aware of it. They became aware of the steps to prevention, and they became aware also of how they can live with it if they've already contracted the virus. So I think it should be with hepatitis. It should become a health discussion at every point in time, not only on July 28th, because the more you talk about it, the more you give people the chance to know about it, the more they're aware of how they can prevent it, and they know how to manage it if they happen to have contracted the disease.
Okay, so we have on the Zoom link, standing by on Zoom actually, someone who will do justice to this issue of hepatitis and how it can be handled or managed. The person is Dr. Emeka Nwune, who is the founder of Sweet Medics Healthcare. So let's speak to you, doctor. Let's confirm you can hear us. Good morning, doctor. I can't hear you. Are you muted?
No, I'm not muted. Can you hear me?
Good morning. We can hear you now loud and clear. Today is World Hepatitis Day, which is meant to draw awareness and sensitize the public around the issues of hepatitis. And we know from our basic reading that we have several strains of hepatitis from A to E, as the case may be. Maybe first and foremost, what is the significance of a day like this from the medical standpoint?
Thank you very much. That's a very good question. World Health Awareness Days, they are usually celebrated every year to raise awareness on like very specific disease burdens that, it's like that's eating deep into our problem just due to lack of education in this cases. So I'd say days like this, especially World Hepatitis Day, is especially set aside to raise awareness on this disease burden is a very serious issue. I know a lot of people hear about HIV, they hear about all the popular ones, but they don't even know something like hepatitis can even be more serious. So it's important to raise awareness for this kind of diseases through, and awareness can be done through various mediums. Online, it can be through community outreaches, through sensitization programs, just like we're doing right now. So I would say it's a significant day globally, recognized by the World Health Organization, set aside to raise awareness on factors and ways that we can, control this disease burden, collaborations, and just efficient ways to reduce the overall health outcome of people living with hepatitis. So I'd say it's a very significant day in the healthcare sector globally. Yeah.
All right, talk to us about
Can
the
you hear
different
me?
strains of hepatitis and their mode of transmission.
Come again, I spoke about what?
The different strains of hepatitis from A, B, C, E, and their modes of transmission.
Okay, thank you very much. So, like you clearly said, there are different kinds of hepatitis strains, as the case may be, and the difference between these different strains have to do with combination of how the severity and the mode of transmission. So I'll start from the first one. We have hepatitis A and we'll say hepatitis A and E. So hepatitis A and E, the mode of transmission is fecal oral. So what I mean by that is like it goes from um, infection from our feces to our mouth. So this can be can be transmitted from food, from drinks, just oral. So it's just through our mouth down to our digestive tract, and the person can come down with the hepatitis. And hepatitis A and E are the less severe forms of hepatitis. That means that people that have these forms of hepatitis don't usually come down with a very severe infection. And apart from hepatitis A and E, we have hepatitis B, C, and D. So the hepatitis B and C are usually transmitted through blood or what's called the vertical transmission. So when we say through blood, it can either be through blood, sexual intercourse with an infected person, and through vertical transmission. So start from the first. So when I say through blood, so for someone to be, to be transmitted with a hepatitis B or C virus, it means that the person's an infected blood must have been directly inoculated or must have come in direct contact with somebody else's opening in the body. So that opening could be like maybe through a cut, and this could happen, for instance, sharing of sharp objects like needles or even like needles that are used to place hair, needles, barbing salon razor blades, um, name it, even in syringes in the hospital. And that is why it's very important that, in hospitals they sterilize their equipment to, kill most of these viral infections and things that can cause um, serious problems. So hepatitis B can be transmitted through all these ways through the blood, as well as C. And the last one I mentioned was through vertical transmission, which means from mother to child. So that means if the mother has hepatitis, it's very possible that the child can get it if the right measures are not taken in place. So these are the main modes of transmission. And the last one I mentioned was hepatitis D. So hepatitis D can only exist um, from hepatitis C. That means somebody cannot have a hepatitis D if you've not had a hepatitis C. So what that means is that hepatitis D is like a complication or a more, progressive form of this hepatitis C virus. And this makes up the main um, strains of hepatitis virus. And so when we talk about the mode of transmission, very basic, like I said, the A and E are less severe forms of hepatitis, and they're
All right,
transmitted
doctor.
from hand to mouth. That's through food.
Yeah, sorry to cut in there. I need you to either confirm something or dispel my fear. Because we read somewhere, we've been told sometimes that, okay, even from sweating, coming in contact with a sweaty person who has hepatitis, maybe strain B or whatever, that you can be infected. Is this true, or is it just one of those common assumptions out there? How safe are we with respect to sweat?
Okay. I mean, we hear a lot of needs regarding that kind of issue, but the fact is that hepatitis can be transmitted through exchange of body fluids, right? But these body fluids have to, the amount of body fluids that have to be transmitted for that hepatitis to transmit has to be a lot. So that's why they mention through what's it called, through sweating. So for that sweating thing to happen, it means that you must really be like in close contact with that person for a long period of time. So I would say like it's the risk is very less. So you really can't. You really can't. So it's also almost impossible. Let me put it like that. So that's not a fact.
Okay.
So don't be scared. If you find out someone has hepatitis, it's not possible to. There's no direct blood, transmission from an infected person to an uninfected person's open wounds or through sexual unprotected sex across from an infected person or from mother to child transmission. So those are the main ways for hepatitis B as transmitted.
Okay, it's very
I hope I was able to
comforting
answer
to
that.
know that the possibility of one contracting hepatitis through sweating or being exposed to the sweat of an infected person is less impossible. So that's very comforting considering the kind of environment and the nature of commuting that we have. So now let's talk about diagnosis of hepatitis and even treatment in Nigeria. How easy is accessibility to diagnosis and treatment of hepatitis?
All right, that's a very good question. Like in Nigeria, in Africa, I realized that from research and clinical based and evidence research, we noticed that a lot of people come to treatment when most of these diseases have progressed, to a more advanced stage. So most times, you can just do your best and try to help them live longer. But I
Can
would
you be
say
more
the
vocal?
first, the
We
first
can barely hear
important step
what you're
is
saying.
education. Education is
Hello, doctor.
sorry.
Can you speak loudly so we can hear clearly what you're saying?
Okay. Am I louder a bit?
Yes, I think you're audible enough now. Go ahead.
Okay, I kind of lost the train of thought. What
Okay,
were
we were
we
talking
talking
about
about?
the accessibility to diagnosis and treatment for hepatitis in Nigeria.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. So, like I said, the main issue with that is education gap. So, once people, the community and people are more aware about the symptoms and things like to look out for early signs about hepatitis, all is very important, and early intervention helps a lot. So when it comes to affordability and testing, there are a lot of innovative ways these days. Something as simple like as a simple rapid test strip, can show you if can show the person if they are hepatitis positive or negative. And in terms of accessibility, almost every labs have access to that. But our advice is good to go to a lab recommended by a doctor or somewhere that has a good track record, so that they're not using substandard means to check your hepatitis results. And also very affordable. The rapid test is below 10,000 naira, and even the more advanced test that gets to show um, the level of your viral load. If peradventure the person ends up having a hepatitis virus, it's still affordable. It's not the most affordable in that case, but it's still a bit more affordable. I think it's under 30,000 naira for that. And facilities do it for free. So I'd say the diagnosis is not really easy when it comes to late detection, but it's very possible, with education and knowing what to do. And that is why we always advocate for preventive measures through screening and vaccination. Vaccination has helps generally to prevent hepatitis, and vaccinations help from early childhood, and you get 3 doses even to adulthood, which lasts for life. They reduce your chances of having a severe form of hepatitis virus. So yeah, in terms of treatment, early detection helps the treatment prognosis and the overall health outcome of the individual living with that. And a specialist called a gastroenterologist, who is specialized, in dealing with things that have to do with our digestive tract, is a specialist meant for that. And they usually have good outcomes once the patients comply with treatments. Yeah.
Okay, doctor, let's talk
So the
about
goal
early
for this,
detection.
for hepatitis B treatment is to prevent transformation or complication of this disease, because it's very possible for different forms of complications, including a liver cancer. So it's very important that, whatever medical advice you get from your doctor regarding your case like hepatitis or any other case, take it seriously and go for all the counseling you need. And I'm sure you get the help you need once you do the right thing.
All right, because of our time, I'd like to ask about early detection, like you mentioned. We know that now there are over-the-counter ways of... Doctor, can you hear me? We have over-the-counter test kits for some kind of ailments.
I don't know if you can hear me, but I can't hear you.
Malaria can be tested with over-the-counter test kits. Do we have that for hepatitis? And if we don't, is there a way technology can assist in early detection that is available to us now? Talking about technology. My question is, do we have over-the-counter test kits for hepatitis, or is there a way technology can make it easy for us to self-test?
Sorry, can you come again? I think I lost you for a second.
Okay, I am saying, do we have over-the-counter test kits for hepatitis? If yes, what are they? And if no, what other technological gadgets can we, probably deploy to give us at least an edge when it comes to early detection of hepatitis?
Oh yes, there are over-the-counter self-test kits available in pharmacies and some distributors that I've seen, and because we've done a few outreaches where we cannot outrightly take the patient's sample and run it in the lab. So we have those rapid test kits usually come through when you have a huge number of people to test, or you're doing outreaches, or you just need the results immediately. They have been very effective and they are easy to use. The manuals are there, very easy to and understandable to use. So they are readily available in pharmacies and distributors. Yeah.
Okay, quickly talking about two things because we're almost out of time. Vaccination and of course treatment. Do we have vaccines for all the strains or is just for hepatitis B? And are they free vaccines for children and adults? And then let's talk about the treatment. What is the duration of treatment? Lifelong or temporary? Or is just for you to treat for a particular time and then you're off it?
Okay. For the vaccine, there's just a hepatitis B vaccine. Hepatitis B vaccine is gotten at infancy. You get the first dose at infancy. You get but you also get 2 booster doses. I recently just completed my booster doses about 3 years ago. And regarding cost, I think the one you receive at infancy, the one you receive at birth is free, but when you get older, you pay for the vaccine. I know the one I paid for, the one I did, the 2 doses I got, I think it was under 3,000 naira. Yeah. So you'll be able to get vaccine in any primary health center close to you. So the primary health centers in most local governments, if you go in there, just let them know, please, you would like to get a hepatitis vaccine. And first of all, they'll ask you if you've gotten yourself tested. If not, you get tested to confirm everything is good. Then you go ahead with it. So yeah, that's for hepatitis B, A, C. No, sorry, for hepatitis A, C, D, and E. There's no known vaccine for now.
What about treatment?
Yeah, regarding
is it
the cost,
lifelong?
Yeah.
What about treatment? Is it lifelong or is just within a specific duration and the person who's contracted hepatitis will be well after going through treatment for a certain period of time?
So the treatment, to be honest, I would say is not really straightforward and it has to do with from person to person. Like I said, depending on the severity, the complications, and the particular strain of hepatitis. So let's talk about the most severe form of the chronic hepatitis, which is the hepatitis B. The treatment is usually very prolonged. It might not be lifelong. Sometimes people, because the liver is I would say, is a very strong and funny organ that regenerates itself, it repairs itself. So it's sometimes some people relapse and they have some people reverse the process and they get better over time. Some people, so it depends on the duration, depending on the severity, it will depend on the duration and the overall health outcome. Like I said, if there are already certain complications going on, you're trying to correct the problem, also trying to correct the complications here and there. So the overall health outcome and the overall treatments is dependent on.
It's a pity we are out of time, Dr. Emeka Nwone, and that has been a brilliant conversation, and our eyes are open now. We know how safe we are as a people, and we know that we owe ourselves that responsibility to ensure that we stay healthy, get vaccinated, and get to know as much as we can about hepatitis, the different strains of it from A to E. And that is the size of the package today on Early Exchange. Thank you very much for standing by us from Monday till Friday. Until Monday will come your way, my name is Ayo Jimmy. Thank you very much. Blessing.
Thank you for watching, and we ask that you take the information you've gotten from Early Exchange and see where they apply in your life and in your business so you can get to the next level. Life is supposed to be progressive. I am Blessing Aichi. We'll see you next week.